This was France. France under enemy boots. This was Hitler's France, where the strutting conqueror paraded, where traitors did his bidding and waited for his praise. This was a France whose leaders shouted the new slogans of Nazi Germany instead of the old words, liberty, equality, fraternity. These Frenchmen lived uneasily under the protection of German bayonets, for they knew that millions of other Frenchmen awaited their chance for vengeance. Underground organizations were growing bolder despite the pleadings and threats of the collaborationists.
Dans une guerre d'assassinats, de femmes, d'enfants, de mutilés et de guerriers.
German posters in every town warned of penalties for resistance, for sabotage, for aid to the Allies. But the resistance grew. The sabotage increased. Despite those threatening words, the penalty is death. In 1942, the Allied command in England sent a man to France. The parachutist, known only as Director X, was to organize an underground network for the rescue of airmen shot down over France. This is the story of that network, of Frenchmen who risked their lives and Americans whose lives were saved. In 1944, when the Allied air forces began to blast an invasion pathway through France, the escape network was completely organized through every town and village. German films captured by the underground show American planes shot down by the Nazis. These bombers were a small percentage of our forces, but the men they carried were numbered in the thousands. Beneath the air battles, the little people of France went about their work. Only a few could belong to the organized underground, but the others were sometimes drawn briefly into that secret world by a quirk of fate. Many braved the death penalty alone, with no resistance network to aid them. Here is the story of one Frenchman's introduction to the underground in his own words. I was working in the field one day when I heard the sounds of battle in the sky. I looked up and saw an American bomber in flames. Those poor ones, I thought, they surely are through with the war. But I was wrong. Soon I saw 3 of them coming toward me. They came to me for help, to be hidden from the Germans. What could I do? I could not refuse these brave ones who fight the Boche. And so I decided to hide them in my hayloft. I thought of the posters which warn of death for doing this. But 3 death penalties are no more than 1. Then what to do with them in a town where the Germans search all day? At first, I could think of no one to help. After 2 days, I told my troubles to the village priest. He said not to worry, everything would be taken care of. What he meant, I didn't know. But now I know. I know that my words with the priest set the entire network of the underground in operation. A few days later, to my surprise, the school teacher came to see me. He said very little, just gave me papers and said to stick on pictures of the flyers and their fingerprints. When that is done, dress the men in civilian clothes and notify me, he said. Your part will be finished. We will send them home. I gave them what clothing I had. To one boy, I gave a pair of canvas shoes. To another, my wedding shoes. The third took my hobnail boots, my only pair. I led the boys to the school teacher, and that was the last I saw of them. My adventure was ended. 3 more men on the road to freedom, passing from hand to hand on the underground network. These 3, like most of the others, were sent to Paris, where strangers are unnoticed. Underground workers in a Paris hideout await the arrival of a radio transmitter. Daily broadcasts to London verified the identity of rescued airmen. Scenes made by French cameramen during the German occupation. A midget transmitter carried through the streets in a knapsack. If the knapsack is searched, an innocent portable typewriter will be found. Every day, the antenna is rigged in a different part of the city. The broadcast is short. The equipment quickly moved, for Gestapo radio control cars close in when the first signal goes out. Like all underground workers, the radio men knew only one section of the network. They delivered London messages and got their orders at the control center. At one time, an antique store, and later a workshop for sporting goods. Here was the heart of the escape network, the place where all messages from Director X were distributed. When arriving airmen had been reported to London, orders went out from this shop for the false papers which would carry them safely out of the country. False papers were made in a fully equipped engraving and printing plant, staffed by craftsmen who could forge any document issued by the German and French governments. This was part of the secret life of France, carried on under the nose of the German conqueror. Simple identity cards were made by the thousands. They were sent to distribution points throughout France, ready for the photographs and fingerprints which would identify American and British flyers as Frenchmen. When the airmen arrived in Paris, other documents were made. Passports, travel permits, Gestapo passes. Everything required to carry them through the strongly guarded frontier areas to safety. Regular messenger service delivered the papers to Paris hideouts, where at times more than 1,000 Americans and British were waiting to leave for home. Now 2 steps remain. the trip to the frontier and then across the border to freedom. Some flyers were picked up by American planes on hidden airfields. Others used the perilous land route across France. The trip through the underground network sometimes took months, with many weeks of waiting in Paris. One British airman and 2 Americans, filmed in Paris on June 9, 1944, 3 days after the landings on Normandy. Scenes made by Gaston Madrou, cameraman of the French resistance, who was later killed in action with the American army at Leipzig.
Hello, I suppose you're glad to be here. You came from where?
From England.
You came from England, and you?
I'm from America.
You're from America. America, what town?
Glasgow.
Glasgow.
Yeah.
And you from what town?
Minneapolis.
Minneapolis, and you?
I'm from Chicago.
Oh, Chicago, that's the town of the gangsters, no? No. And were the Frenchmen nice with you?
Oh, yes, they've been very nice.
How did it happen to you? You find a farm, a little farm, or what?
I spent 4 days in the cave, 4 days and 3 nights.
4 days and 3 nights in a cave, and you?
I was 5 days in the woods, hiding out in the woods.
Oh, yes, and then you find a little farm. How did you make to come to Paris?
Well, a farmer fed me, and then he brought me an identification card, and underground took me to Paris.
Oh, yes, and you?
After spending 4 days in a cave, the French people in the town contacted me with a French officer of the underground.
Oh, yes.
He brought me identification papers, and I was taken to Paris on the train.
Oh, yes, by the train?
Yes.
Oh, and did you meet German soldiers?
Many of them.
Many of them?
Yeah.
And did you meet German soldiers?
Oh, yeah, well, too.
Oh, there's a lot of German soldiers everywhere. Is it the first time that you came in Paris?
First time on the ground.
The first time on the ground? Oh, that's quite marvelous. And you?
The first time.
The first time also. And I suppose that you saw a lot of pictures of Paris.
Oh, yes, I've seen many, the Eiffel Tower especially.
Oh, right, the Eiffel Tower. You can see the Eiffel Tower there.
Oh, yes. We've seen many pictures of it. It's possible to get closer to it and see it properly.
Oh, yes, naturally. Come on, boys, come with me. You see the Eiffel Tower properly.
This is Operation Underground, a special tour through occupied Paris, arranged by cameramen of the resistance. The tourists, the guide, the cameraman risked death to show their contempt for the German army and Gestapo. The warning posters. For aid to the enemy, the penalty is death. But the tour continues. Operation Underground was planned as a record of the escape network's achievement. After years of secrecy, the cameraman abandoned caution and took the risk, so that the world could see a part of the secret life of France, the real France which lived on through the occupation. Reunion in New York. The 2 Americans who participated in Operation Underground see another city under somewhat different circumstances. Located by Newsweek magazine, they are together for the first time since their Paris tour 2 years earlier. Al Richter, the navigator, was found in Chicago, working his way through college as an expressman. Robert Peterson was located in Minneapolis, learning his trade as a tile setter. They are interviewed by Newsweek's managing editor, Fred Vanderschmidt.
Those were terrific scenes of you boys sightseeing in Paris. How'd you ever happen to take such a risk?
Oh, we were just tired of being cooped up and thought we'd take a look around.
And they were risking their necks for us, so we figured that was the least we could do to help them.
Did the underground ever tell you why they wanted these pictures taken?
Yes. Some of the French people had been forced to work for the Germans during the occupation, and they wanted to be able to prove that they were part of the underground, and they also wanted a record of their work.
While you were walking around Paris, didn't anyone seem suspicious of you?
Well, the German soldiers themselves didn't act a bit suspicious, but some of the French people acted very strange.
Remember the time we passed a group of French girls and women? And one of them stated, or made a remark as we passed, which our guide later translated it for us. She said that we looked just like the Americans.
We thought we saw several Americans in Paris ourselves. In fact, we saw one fellow walking around in French clothes with a pair of GI shoes on. The French people told us that there were about 1,000 Americans in Paris at the same time that we were there.
You boys had the rare experience of being in France during the occupation. At any time, did any of the French people seem to be resentful of the bombings of their cities?
No, they didn't seem resentful toward us. After all, they risked their lives for us, and hundreds of French people who were not part of the underground movement saw us and recognized us during our walk around Paris, but didn't turn us in. So we owe our lives to them, and we're very grateful.
These men are but 2 of the thousands who were rescued by the people of France, by underground workers and simple patriots. These Frenchmen, men and women of every age and occupation, braved torture, slavery, and death in the spirit of wartime sacrifice. These were true heroes of France, patriots who kept the real France alive for the moment of victory.